Good afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. This is Talib Karim Muhammad, and I am here live in Washington, D.C., with two fabulous women. We're going to be talking today about the beautiful representation of STEM women leaders that we have in our network, and why it's important for us to uh, focus on uh, issues of women in leadership roles, not just during March, which is the kind of month that is designated for that. As you may know, we have these different months, like we have Women's History Month, we have Black History Month, and we are firm believers that we need to be talking about both issues relating to all people, particularly women and people of color, African Americans, and others all the time, not just during designated months. Um, and so, with that, we're looking forward to a great conversation. In particular, we're looking forward to uh, talking about real solutions about engaging our youth and what these women have done in their own roles to engage youth. As we might know, the recent DC Council vote um, basically rejected the mayor's proposal to extend the current curfews that were designed to prevent the youth takeovers of the Southwest Riverfront, the U Street corridor, and other places where youth have enjoyed themselves during the warmer parts of the year. But the problem is that we know is that curfews don't work, but neither do the other draconian things that the District of Columbia in particular are doing, such as disuniting or canceling fathers from the lives of their children. But we at STEM for Us have proven programs that are working, and yet these programs are not getting the support that could actually allow our young people to be fully engaged. The youth and the people are the District of Columbia's most valuable assets, not its property. Uh, and this is the conversation that we look forward to having. So stand by for us to bring on two dynamic guests and to talk with them about their perspective on this topic. Okay, I'm back, and with me, I am joined by two fabulous women who are doing some amazing work to actually address both issues of youth takeovers or youth violence, and engaging young people in general for opportunities, both relating to STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and other occupations. And so, with me, I want to just introduce. First, we have Sharifah Masten, who is an amazing HR professional, and she is with an outstanding company, Barbaricum, I look forward to her explaining about what they do. And also, she is the vice chair of our board of directors, and we are very grateful for Sharifah's leadership. I personally have seen it in motion, and it has made a tremendous impact on our organization. And so we know firsthand the role that ladies, in particular leaders who are women, can make. And I, as someone who is raising a daughter myself, I'm particularly interested in making sure that our women are both prepared for leadership roles and are supported in those. We also have Grace Ayers, from New Orleans or Baton Rouge. I'm not quite sure which one, but she'll hopefully give us a definitive answer of where she hails from. But the great state of Louisiana, and she is doing some wonderful work in helping to prepare formerly incarcerated people for vocational training and job placement upon their release. And I want to talk and hear her story of how she got to where she is. But before we get started, I want to just invite all of you all who may be listening to us to drop into the comment, below. Share with us your own ideas about engaging young people, about addressing the issues of takeovers, about promoting women in particular. This is your time, and we look forward to you being a part of this conversation as well. So, again, and of course, if you want to get involved in the work of STEM for Us, if you want to do more than just talk about it, we would invite you to make an investment today, because sadly, the government of the District of Columbia is basically not doing what we believe they should be doing, and that is investing in STEM programs that work, like ours. So if you want to make an investment, then I'm going to drop into the chat a link for you to do just that. You can become a sponsor of our organization to support both our operating expenses and our programming expenses, and that can get you in the mix of actually sponsoring and in fact even volunteering and doing other amazing works relating to our young people. So that is my pitch, and you can see that information in the chat. We will also look forward to putting it into basically a banner, and so you can see that opportunity as well. But without any further ado, I want to actually bring onto the stage again our lovely and outstanding guests, special guests actually, and have them talk a little bit about their journeys into their roles. So let's first of all welcome them. Welcome, women, ladies, leaders. How are you all doing?
Doing good, Talib. Thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for joining us and your commitment to us, highlighting particularly the leaders that we have in the STEM area, and leaders who just so happen to be women, not just during Women's History Month, but every month. So without any further ado, let's first start with you, Sharifah. Can you tell us a little bit about your own journey, a little bit about what you do every day, and how you got there?
Hmm. Sure. For me, my journey is one of those that started from being young, and as we're talking about youth as well, needing to have an outlet and where to go. And music became a part of my life early on. And from that, it was the positive force that started guiding me um, throughout my career. So the military, was one big thing that I did that helped shape who I am today. And I did that through music initially before I changed, sort of what my focus was on in the military. And from there, I've just gone on in different organizations. I'm going to say going from junior to senior positions, working my way up. But I'm also a walking example of not taking a traditional path to leadership and not letting your circumstances define who you are moving forward. So today I have a management consulting firm. While I am the CHRO for Barbaricum. I also provide uh, HR services to multiple organizations, do that advice and everything, as well as working with nonprofits, and hopefully, trying to create pathways and skills for others to get meaningful jobs that they can support their families on.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your leadership. Let us also now bring to the stage Grace, our second guest. Grace.
Hi, Talib. Thank you for having me. And I will say that I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. Born and raised. I did spend a few years in Florida, but I had to come back home to be close to family. So I am back in New Orleans. And I really thank you for having me tonight. So I am the founder and executive director of Global Assistance Initiatives. Global Assistance Initiatives is a fairly new nonprofit. However, even though it's a new nonprofit, I have started the groundwork for the work that I'm doing last year. I actually house formerly incarcerated individuals. So giving them that support and providing stable housing when they are released. And so last year I started doing the housing under an LLC. However, this year I expanded to a nonprofit just to scale the impact. So I'm able to help more individuals with housing. And not only do I provide housing, we look at it as a holistic approach. So resources for employment, counseling, life skills training, all of those things that make an individual feel whole and complete and part of a community. So that's part of what we do at Global Assistance Initiatives, just trying to help with the recidivism rate and the homelessness crisis that is apparent in New Orleans, and I'm sure it's apparent in other places as well.
Now, for both of you and our guests, let me specifically mention to Grace, since Grace, you may have remembered that Sharifah gave a little bit of background about how she got into her role, what inspired her. If you could, especially in terms of the work with the formerly incarcerated, what was your pathway? Not everyone kind of aspires to be a co-founder of an organization doing your work. What inspired you specifically?
Well, just my environment, the environment that I was raised in, seeing, the just being part of an underserved community myself, inspired me to want to be part of the change and help people. I've been in the legal field since 2008, so I've always been, part of trying, I've always worked to be part of the solution to help people in some way, in some way. So just, growing up in poverty and in, the underserved communities and having friends being arrested or, family members being arrested. I have a cousin that actually was released maybe 3 years ago. He served a 32-year sentence and his sentence was overturned. So there's so many people that are in those situations that shouldn't be. So it's just, it starts with the lack of resources from, there's the school to prison pipeline, and that's a real thing. And it just starts with the lack of resources, starting from, child on up. And so just being part of that community and seeing all the issues going on around me, it just, pushed me to want to be part of the solution.
Excellent, and I appreciate you giving that background. Sharifah, can you tell us exactly how are you engaging with people, either formerly incarcerated or youth or other vulnerable people in mentoring, and kind of breaking that pipeline that Grace was discussing, ending the preschool to prison pipeline and creating from preschool to C-suite pipeline. What are you doing in that space?
I think it's just a part of my everyday is not just is to look up and down, right, across the whole spectrum. So that could be um, working through my nonprofit or working with other nonprofits. I deal with people every day, and you'd be surprised, even with employees, for those who are employed, it doesn't mean they still don't have things going on in their lives. They might not have some of these situations. Also, they have children. So oftentimes it's about me speaking with somebody in a situation and helping them to find resources that can provide that help, to help coach and mentor them on how to address a certain situation. It, and I say that because coming from underserved, and I talked earlier about people having meaningful jobs, but it's also wages, right? Living wages, right? Can they take care of their family? You know, a lot of times people do things out of desperation. So how are we giving them that hand to help get them through that moment? A lot of decisions are made in the heat of a moment because they're trying to handle something that is happening right now and not thinking about what's coming down the road, even a month from now. They're just trying to address it. So working with different organizations through nonprofits, having employees, employers as well. I think it's very important that employers need to look at employees more than just um, those getting the work done to fuel their business, right? I'm a big proponent of what if you have something in your personal life affecting you, it's going to affect your work life. And it's the same thing. Work, if something's going wrong at work, it's going to impact outside of work. So you can't separate the two. And so we have to remember, sort of like what Grace said earlier, it's holistic. And it's not just an individual, it's also who's around them. It's that community. And it's also about engaging the community to not just look the other way and to be a part of helping to find solutions. You can find mentors there. You'd be surprised. A mentor doesn't have to be somebody who's had 10, 15 years. They could have just been someone who has experienced the same thing that someone else has, but can show them there's another way to go or that it will be okay.
I think that's a good point about mentorship, Grace. How have you personally been involved in mentoring either formerly incarcerated or young men and women yourself? And maybe talk a little bit, if you could share a story about your own mentor, if you will, if you had a mentor, what was that person's kind of impact on you and inspiring you to do what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I have to say, my first ever mentor and who my first encounter of a woman's strength was my mom. Um, that's, hands down, my mom was my first encounter because I always saw her working hard, never giving up. Always, she's so resilient. And even now, she is one of the reasons that I have that characteristic of serving my community, because even now she's retired and she's still serving. She cooks, she prepares meals for disabled veterans right now, so in her retired years. So that is my first encounter with the woman's strength, and a woman mentor that showed me what it meant to be strong and to serve others. Because sometimes we when we think about our self-care, and when women think of that, it's not just yourself, it's self-care is everyone, the people that you are involved with. So I would say that first. Now, being in the legal field, I have encountered several women that have had very important responsibilities, immense responsibilities in leadership roles and commanding the boardroom. So I have encountered that, and that they have been mentors for me. Now, as far as myself, I have done some, mentorship work. I have hosted tea parties for young girls in the city. Just trying to, get them to see their importance and listen to them, because that's one of the main things I feel with youth. Adults don't listen. We don't listen to what their needs are, what they, we have this idea of what we think it should be or how we think things should run or operate, but we don't never listen to the youth and what they need. So that was the name of the tea party was Beautifully Me, and I hosted that. I also sit on the board for Daughters. I don't know if you all heard of this organization, but it's a wonderful organization doing amazing things in New Orleans. It's Daughters Beyond Incarceration, and I sit on the board for Daughters Beyond Incarceration, and it is an organization that helps young girls between the age of 8 and 18 that have an incarcerated parent, and may assist them through mentorship, public advocacy, and just different community programs for them. And it is amazing. It is really an amazing program for the youth here. Actually, they are coming up, I think, next month. They're having Youth Prevention Violence Week. And so during that week, it's a week of events. They host a panel for the youth to talk about ways that the, city and the municipalities can support them in the prevention of violence in the city. So that's an amazing organization here in New Orleans that's helping the youth. And I sit on the board.
Well, we are so grateful to have someone like you, and to have people like Sharifah both engaged on these topics. Perhaps what we can do now, Sharifah, is specifically ask you about solutions that you believe we should be focusing, particularly on workforce development. How do we take young people, particularly those that have had challenges in their life where they've fallen through the crack? How do we take them through your pipeline, get them in, first of all, and then perhaps coach them to hopefully becoming an HR exec like you are? How can that be done?
I think you have to start, and actually could start anytime, but definitely in the schools and in the communities. I am very big on, if we don't build pathways for the youth, they will build their own. And sort of what's happening now in DC, what you're seeing them, finding places to hang out and how they're spending their time and getting to, they're building a camaraderie, but it's not focused. So we owe them opportunities, but not just saying here's an opportunity for you, but showing them what that progress through and where they can end up. You can take them, sit them in a room, but if you're not really turning it into something tangible, it's just something they did, right? You just kept them maybe off the streets, or, you have to get them excited about it. So when you do these things, especially when it comes to workforce development, the ideal is you want to get them working, right? So when you look at high school kids, there are programs, through my organ, we work with like 16-year-olds on up to get them the certifications through Cisco, because what can happen is they can have that cert by the time they graduate high school and be able to go get a job. It's about creating apprenticeships, creating where they can start off and learn. On the job training is very important. Sometimes they don't need, they're out there trying to work, or they're trying to, the reason why they might not be able to hold a job is it might not be able to um, hold their attention, right? It might not be exactly what they want to do. And we have to get them to understand, we all have done jobs we might not have liked, right? But we use it as a stepping stone. So creating those pathways, I think, is very important for our youth. We have to give them things that they can do. If we don't give it to them, they'll find it themselves, and it could turn to crime, if we don't give them something positive to look forward to. And we have to meet them where they're at. It's not a one size approach will fit everyone.
I think she raises a good point, Grace, about the issue being one of managing your resources, right? And youth, young people are a resource. And the question is whether or not, particularly here in the District of Columbia and maybe even there in Louisiana, do you feel that we are looking at young people as resources in the first place, or are we just looking at them as problems? And do you think that that is the main reason why we have what we have? Is that we're looking at them not as for what they have the potential to become, but we're only looking at the challenge of managing their time now, which we don't seem to have dedicated programming for such. We might even have recreation centers, newly built recreation centers in the communities. I mean, the mayor and the last administration spent perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars building new recreation centers. But the question is what programming is attracting young people to those recreation centers? We all know, probably each one of us, of horrible stories of bad things happening at recreation centers. So personally, I am not inclined to send my own children to a recreation center unless I know that it's safe and there's staff and there's activities to make sure that young people are going to be engaged. But if you could speak to what you see, and particularly this idea of young people being resources as opposed to security risks, if you will.
Yeah, so I agree with you on it, and that's a good way to look at it when you say the young people being an actual resource. So it made me think about my nonprofit. Like I said, it's a fairly new nonprofit. So when I thought about the board, I knew that to build this organization to the level where I wanted it to be, I needed to have a diverse board. I needed to have, I wanted it's across all generations. And so I needed a Gen Zer on there because they are creative, they're very innovative, and they're going to bring some bright ideas that, the older generation may not think of. And so I think sometimes we can get stuck in tradition, and sometimes we're not open to exploring new ideas, or like I said before, actually listening to what the youth have to say. And so I feel like that is a great a great perspective. And I do think in New Orleans they have a youth council, so where it's the mayor's youth council, and so they take it's a selection process, because my daughter, she's in college in Houston now, but I believe maybe 3 years ago she applied for the youth council. And what they do, they go through an application process, and the mayor selects or the mayor's team selects a certain amount of youth from the city, and that youth, those youth, they come up with the program, their own programs and their own events for the youth in the city. It's something that the youth themselves come up with, and they decide that, hey, we're going to have this event. And they have the events at those recreational centers. So that's, I think that's a good idea. And then they also have Force NOLA. They hold Youth Force NOLA is held during the summer. And my daughter actually went through the program and she enjoyed it. They teach them how to build their resumes. They give them actual jobs. So my daughter, she worked at the convention center for the summer. And so they learn a lot of technical things on how to actually go into adulthood, into the workforce. And so I feel like that's a good opportunity for the youth. But I think the main thing, like you said, is looking at youth as a resource, because that's what they are. Because, we're aging out. I mean, not so fast, but we are eventually. So, you have to you have to be able to pick their brains and get those ideas out of them. And when they, they see that they are, because some youth, they don't look at themselves that way. They don't, because the adults don't look at them that way. So when you feed them and feed them that encouragement, it builds confidence within them. And so they're able to see, how Sharifah said, what's possible in the future.
I like that commentary in terms of what's possible in the future. Sharifah, can you maybe, as we dive into, I tell you what, let's tee up the exact issue, and I'll share with our audience, from those who might not be familiar with what's happening here in DC, and what are the issues. I'll share with you all what we are dealing with, and you can give us your comments. Stand by.
DC council members have postponed a vote extending special team curfew zones. City leaders are trying to balance public safety while supporting young people. Randy Hildreth explains.
Within the last few hours, we got a statement from DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser saying that she's deeply disappointed with the council's decision to allow the juvenile curfew zones to expire. Now, tonight, other community members are thinking through what else can be done to give teens an alternative option for fun. High schooler Lyric Young spent Tuesday afternoon helping younger students make Easter baskets at Benning Stoddard Rec Center.
Mentoring them, or trying to make their life fun.
But what fun looks like for some kids her age is weighing on DC council members. Recent teen takeovers, where large and sometimes unruly groups gather at places like Navy Yard or U Street Corridor, have been on her mind too.
They're ruining it for everybody else.
DC's Department of Parks and Recreation is stepping in, offering alternative options for teens.
There's always a call to respond to what's happening.
Thene Freeman with the Department of Parks and Recreation says they're hosting events this Friday and Saturday, specifically in response to teen takeovers. Freeman says the late night events are designed to get teens off the streets and offer safe, supervised activities.
The goal is to change the narrative and to get our teens to lock in into owning that this is your city and you have to take care of it.
DC council members are also trying to figure out what else can be done to curb these teen gatherings. On Tuesday, council members postponed a vote on another emergency order to extend the current youth curfew. It allows DC police to set up special curfew zones that prohibit gatherings of 9 or more teens. The current order expires April 15th. Councilman Zachary Parker says he's concerned an extension of the curfew.
So this is a little bit of background about the issue of curfews. And the reality is that, the council has not invested in engaging young people or addressing those issues that we see on display, which is basically selfishness, young people not feeling invested in the community, being willing to harm other people and place themselves in harm's way. And those issues, as you know, don't just start when the weather is warm. These are issues that start from birth. In fact, even before birth. And we have no plan in the District of Columbia about how to address that. But in fact, every single day, we're creating the environment for these types of issues to not only take place, but to expand. Specifically in the District of Columbia, as you may know, we have a court system that evicts mainly fathers from their home almost on a Monday through Friday basis. And it is done, specifically under the guise of, on the one hand, which we all agree in protecting women, but on the other hand, because of the way in which it's implemented, it results in nothing more than the creation of more insecurity, because you don't have the type of discipline and mentoring by fathers of their own children. But that's just one aspect of it. There's no discipline also in the school systems. There's no, again, even the summer youth program that, as you may know, Marion Barry in DC is known for. One of the greatest assets that he did contribute was this wonderful youth program that made sure that every young person had a job that they could then use as a pathway starting in high school towards them being able to get into the workforce. Well, the mayor's summer youth program now has been really whittled down to only a shell of what it used to be. And in order to have applied and actually gotten a summer job through this program, you had to have applied weeks ago, back in March. Now, how many young people are even thinking about summer jobs in, when it's snowing almost on the ground? But that's what this current administration is doing. And of course, that's one of the reasons why, we are, of course, trying to do something about it on the political sense. And I don't want to really talk about what we're doing politically, but that's what inspires us. But in that context, what do you all think, Sharifah, about what can be done to address these underlying issues, not just, put some pizza out and hope that young people will grab, although pizza is always a good solution, at least when I was young. What's your solution, Sharifah?
Yeah, I don't know if it's not really a solution right now, but one thing I do know is that the policies are what is wrong and how we are addressing it. To what we talked about earlier, we're handling this in old school ways. What worked 20 years ago is not going to work today. The youth are a lot more technology focused, but don't get me wrong, I enjoy being out. But our curfew used to be before the street light came on, right? I knew I had to be home by then. But I also think that we have to get away from where discipline comes from. I grew up in a house with a mother. My mother was a disciplinarian. I did not have my father in the house. And so I don't want to use that as an excuse to give youth to go and do things they shouldn't be doing, because there is something about discipline can come from many different places, not just a father. And I believe I'm a success story of not having my father in my life. I did not turn, while others maybe in my family or where I grew up did end up getting incarcerated, or, some of them had their fathers at home, and we're in the same place in life. So I do believe that we have to sit down, look at the policies. If anyone thinks that having a curfew is going to solve it, they're wrong. Having programs, there are many organizations, and you hinted to it earlier when you said there are organizations in any community, not just DC, could be in New Orleans, Philadelphia, anywhere, that are not part of the conversation, right? There could be a task force with the mayor's office, community based. Get your community involved. What can they do? When you're talking about the youth summer program, how do you even, more organizations probably have the ability to help be a part of that, to create jobs, to have internships. But are we reaching out to all of them, or are we just expecting people to know, right? What Marion Barry did many years ago, who today is remembering that, right? Who's trying to keep that alive? Or are we taking these programs and just treating them like check the box? Oh, we did this. We did this. How many youth do we have in DC, and how many are being reached? If they're able to do takeovers and they're getting unruly, it's because they have nothing to focus on, nothing to keep them, uh, to engage them, right? To give them something to do that's positive. But the fact is, if they are able to hang together and not do anything, have brawls and things like that, and they're just having a good time, but we go and then we break it up, even though they haven't done anything wrong, then we're sort of telling them they stayed out of trouble, they just hung out, they were told they had to go home, or if something happened and they're in a group, it's the same thing. So I think we do just have to change that conversation and um, remember that youth need access, they do need opportunity, and they need a connection. That's where they're at today, and that's what we have to be able to provide.
That's a very good
Hope that
point.
helps from my
You know,
perspective answer.
very good point, and I think it paves the way for Grace. What do you think are out of the box solutions, as Sharifah talked about? I mean, on the one hand, we do have problems with parents. No one really talks about what are the roles that parents can be supported, because a lot of particularly challenges come from mothers who might feel overwhelmed and check out, if you will, because they just don't have support, and then they let their children go outside, and they don't know necessarily what the children are doing. And as Sharifah said, there are a lot of children coming from really good neighborhoods. Like myself, I also had two parents in my household, but yet, as a young person, I was mischievous and made bad decisions, and only for the grace of the Almighty, and I know firmly that they were because of the prayers of my parents. I was not one of your clients, Grace, being incarcerated. Only for the grace of the Almighty did I manage to avoid, very bad decisions. But this is what happens every single day. Young people making bad decisions, and again, parents not necessarily having the support that they need. Can you speak to perhaps what we can be doing on the parent side?
So I think the support on a parent side, I feel like, well, I can speak for women. I can speak for women right now, and I will say that for women, a Black woman for sure, because I'm a Black woman, so I can speak for a Black woman. When she loves something or someone, she is not going to let that person or that thing fail. She's going to try her best. She's going to do whatever she needs to do to make it work. So it's not the lack of talent or the lack of will coming from a mother. It's the lack of resources. It's almost more than 9 times out of 10 the lack of resources. And so when I look at the reentry program that I operate, our main focus is support. So we want the individual to feel supported as soon as they're released. And that main thing that they need, that every individual needs, whether it's man, woman, child, they need housing. So they need stable housing. Outside of stable housing, when we talk about the adults, they need employment. They need to know that they can provide for themselves and their family. And when they have those two necessities, then we can start being creative. We can start thinking, but the main two things are the housing and the employment. And when that is lacking, then you can't really think fully. You can't be creative. You can't thrive the way that you would thrive if you had a stable house. You didn't have to worry about the rent or the light bill or the water bill. You didn't have to worry about those things. And so those main necessities are crucial. Then we go into the mental. So again, we focus on a holistic approach. So we focus on the mental, providing mental counseling if there's need for counseling, which I feel like everybody needs counseling. So there's always a need for counseling, and that even goes into the youth. I heard y'all say that they have these takeovers where they're taking over certain parts of the city, and they're and then it's being broken up. I went to this event probably 3 years ago, and they asked how many times, when we walk past kids, and we might be going to the store, they may have some kids standing outside by the store. Do we just walk past them, or do we speak to them? Do we say hello, like we would speak to an elder if we saw an elder? Or do we say, hey, how you doing? How your day going? Or what you getting into today? Like, why? Do we speak to them? Do we talk to them? Or do we just bypass them like they're not even there, like because they're a child? And so having those conversations, I'll still go back to listening to the child. Like, you have to understand, because their problems aren't ours. I mean, we may be having problems with finances or whatever our problems are. It's not the problems that they have, but they still have problems. They have problems on their level. And so it takes talking about those problems and having that mental health infrastructure, because mental health is a major thing, and it could be it could seem small or it could be huge, but it all needs to be addressed, and it all needs to be talked about. And having that communication with youth, and sometimes that communication takes an outside source, not actually the parent, because you just said you had a mother and father and you still were mischievous, but sometimes it takes an outside source to dig deep and reach in and see what the problem is. And that mental health infrastructure is a major piece when it comes to helping the parents and the youth, because we all need it.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Well, I think that is a really beautiful commentary that you offered. And I think that it allows us to kind of segue to the end of our podcast. And I really want you all to know that I'm very grateful that you all took part in this wonderful conversation. I'd like for you all to maybe go back to what you just said. Let's say if you were passing the 17 or 18-year-old yourself, what would let's just say if you saw yourself amongst a group of other young people taking over a particular space, and you sense that maybe it might start to get out of control sooner or later, particularly if it was at night. What kind of conversation do you think would be effective? Let's pretend again that you are talking to yourself, but a younger self. Can you offer in closing some advice that you might give your younger self in a way that maybe, hopefully, your younger self would listen to? Let's start from you, Sharifah.
Wow, that's going back a few years there. Let me think. But I do know one thing. And as I talked about, sort of my path and finding something I was interested in. Um, you know, one of the things someone had said to my mother was, you have got to get something to focus her on, because she either is going to be whatever she does, I was going to do it, I was going to lead it, basically. They said if there was a gang, I wasn't going to just be part of a gang, I was going to figure out how to run the gang, right? And but then, I got focused on something different and, went that leadership path. And part of it is finding at my youth, someone finding me and saying I had a voice and I could also help shepherd the other youth around me. Sometimes I could be that voice sometimes they do need leadership, but they need youth leadership, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So another youth can take the stand. So back then, for me, if this was going on, I would probably want to step up and say, hey, what do we want to do? Right? Do we want to play games? Do we want to, there's all these fun games you could do, just having people talk. Or what about the times I do remember in the neighborhood? If you remember, people used to get out there and break dance, right? It was just, they get their boom box, whatever it was back then, but create a sense of positive, environment, right? Because once people are having a good time, they kind of forget about, they behave differently,
Mhm.
right? When people are getting angry, it's coming out of frustration. So for that time, I guess I would say, how can I step up and be part of the youth leadership and getting um, those around me to think positive, to do something positive, right? Just channeling that energy and helping to shape that conversation with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess if you're gonna have that, I could pass that to Grace as well.
Great, Grace. I think that's a good thing. So let's again pretend you are seeing a youth takeover, if you will, and what would you offer to your younger self that you might have seen in these youth takeovers? What advice would you give yourself? What would you say directly to even capture the attention of your younger self? And how that conversation be like.
Yeah, I think what Sharifah said was very powerful because when you're that age, sometimes leadership looks very scary because you don't know if you say something, you might become the enemy of everyone else, or everyone might not like you anymore. So I feel like that's a very powerful thing because it's a ripple effect. When you do, you might be thinking in your head that, okay, if I say this, if I do this, everyone's going to maybe look at me different, but actually it's going to become a ripple effect because when you lead and you stand up for something that's right, and then, okay, this is, what do you guys want to do? This is what we're going to, okay, let's put it together. It forces community. It makes you feel important, but it also, becomes a ripple effect. It makes others want to do the same thing. And then the main thing is like just being confident in yourself, being confident in what you know, and not letting anyone tell you, okay, well, no, I would say this. My daughter, and this is kind of off subject, but my daughter's 8 years old, and she likes to wear her hair in its natural state. It's curly, and so she's been wearing it to school naturally. And last night she said, Mom, I got to do something with my hair because every time I walk in class, they're talking about me. They're making fun of me, and her hair is pretty. I'm like, it's pretty. But so this morning when she was getting ready for school, I asked her, I just wanted to check her temperature, and I said, are you going to wear your hair curly? And she said, yes. And I was like, okay, that's good. You're being a leader. You're not letting anyone change what you like to do and what makes you happy. And so when you are a youth, that is important. Not feeling like, okay, I can't do this because this person is going to judge me, or this person is going to feel this way about me. Just being your authentic self and living in that truth, because when you live in that truth, beautiful things can happen, wonderful things can happen. And so just being confident in the person that you are and not letting anyone change that about you. So yeah, I would say that, and that ties into, what Sharifah said about being a leader, because a lot of times when you are a leader, you have those moments of uncertainty and you doubt yourself sometimes, but just being confident and standing in that and living in that and owning it, it is very important to do.
And Grace, I just wanted to add to when you said that being confident, it's also trusting your voice. Because
Yes.
for women, we so often don't trust our voice, or we feel we try to quiet it, right?
Yes. Yes.
That people will not listen. So we have to be confident in what we say and stand by it. Everybody will not agree, like you said, but
Right.
you know what? You need to own it. If you say it, own it,
Own it.
right?
Yes.
If
Yes.
you're going to do it, own it, whatever it is. So I
Yes.
just wanted to tie that into what you said. That voice is very important.
Yes, it is.
Oh, what an amazing conversation we had tonight. And I'm so grateful that we had that conversation. And this is what we're about every day at STEM for us, is hosting and planning and supporting and mentoring, relating to our youth and their parents. And really, this work needs to be scaled. You know, the people currently running, I can say at least DC government, uh, are not innovative about how to address our young people. And, my mentors have told me, and a lot of people that I've gone out and talked to have said that they just don't feel that these people care. Oftentimes, this, you might have heard this thing called the No Kings Day. But I think that we need to think about this as it relates to public officials in general. Do we get the feeling that they look down upon us, the same people who are paying their salaries? Or do they treat us as servant leaders? Do they treat us as, customer service representatives? Or do they feel that we are there to serve them? In DC, I can at least say, for what we see, it's the opposite. It's not what it should be. And we need to change that. And prayerfully, we will change that. But, we are very grateful that you ladies invested your time to help our young people, both here in the District of Columbia, there in New Orleans, and around the country. We have to build a movement, period. We have to build a movement. If we have any hope of making a difference in the lives of our children, we have to create a movement. A movement is an action that is not just a one-day type of event, but something that is consistent, something that is ongoing, that you contribute to almost on a daily basis. And we have to, one thing also, I don't hear this, but I do think this is a major reason why I'm alive and not incarcerated, is because of the prayers of my parents. We cannot think that the solution, it can be done by us alone. We have to be invested in the fact that our Creator, has put children in our lives as a test, either directly as your own, biological children, or as a part of the community. These children are our tests. And so we can't get just focused on the test itself without engaging the test giver. right? The best way of succeeding a difficult exam isn't to throw down the exam out of frustration. It's to seek help from our instructor, and that's something that I think that we have to be courageous enough of putting out there, and that is to say that we as humans cannot solve the problems on our own, that we do need the help of the Almighty. And so with that, I am very grateful that each and every one of you all did participate and that did engage. I want to, again, invite you all to give us a call if you have any interest in being involved in this movement at 202-951-9930, or check us out online at stemforus.org. We're very grateful to both you, Sharifah, and you, our dear sister, Ayers from the great state of New Orleans, Sister Grace Ayers. We really do appreciate you ladies. We ask the Almighty to be with you all and your families, and we look forward to us, getting together again and continuing this relationship that we have to work together and win together for our young people in particular. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, that has been STEM for Us's podcast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the chat. We will, of course, answer them after the fact. And, of course, if you want to give us a call, you're welcome to do so at 202-951-9930. This is Talib Karim Muhammad for STEM for Us. Let's work together and let's win together.